Today we're doing censorship. That's going to take a lot of different forms. Censorship of science. We're going to have a couple of RFK Jr. quotes. We have Ben Shapiro interviewing Marco Rubio on formal censorship. We're going to have JD Vance talking about the subject too. Come along with me and I'll show you all the different ways that people try to win an argument the wrong way. That is using bullying techniques instead of let the argument, let the speech win out. Welcome to the Doug TenNapel channel. This is where the happy patriots are. Here's RFK Jr. on trying to find the source of autism spike that started in the early 90s.
There's a spectrum of injuries, and we don't know. There are studies that look at maternal activation, so that something happens in the womb. There are studies that look at other genetic cause. The issue that we know is genes don't cause epidemics. You need an environmental toxin. And we're going to look at all the potential culprits. We're going to look at mold. We're going to look at food additives. We're going to look at pesticides. We're going to look at air and water and medicines. So, we're going to look at ultrasound, because there's a timeline that, something happened. In fact, Congress said to EPA, ordered EPA to tell us what year the autism epidemic began. The EPA scientists came back and said it happened in 1989. Oh, you have to find a toxin that became ubiquitous around that time period. And that affected every demographic, from Cubans in Key Biscayne to Inuit in Alaska. And that affects boys at a 4-to-1 ratio as girls. There's a limited universe of those, but actually it's quite large. And, Eberhard Spichota was the one who suggested that, one of the things we have to look at is ultrasound. I don't think that that's probably a factor, but it's one of the exposures that became ubiquitous during that period. And
that is my favorite quote, because this is why I kind of like the guy. He goes, I personally don't think that ultrasounds are the cause. I don't think it's a factor. He goes, but we're going to look with an open mind. We're going to look at the air. We're going to look at the water. We're going to look at the chemicals. We're going to look at the, electricity. We're going to look at vaccines. Obviously they are. They're going to look at whatever. I don't know what causes autism. That's the whole problem. No one knows. You just look at it and they just go, it's happening. And he's going to look at ultrasounds with an open mind. That's what free speech is. That's what it's like. It's you take in this information and you don't immediately start cutting people out and saying, you can't talk because you're a Democrat. I can't even consider your idea. You're a Republican. You're out. You're a Christian. You must be right. Come on in and tell us all what to think. Oh, you're an environmentalist. You're correct. Tell us what all the science is. Oh, you're pro-evolution? Oh, then your science gets to be brought into the lab. Do you see how that works? Instead of this open mind of, let's find out. And I really like that about RFK Jr.
We're going to look at all of them agnostically. We're going to find the potential.
Agnostically meaning I don't know. You don't know if you're an agnostic.
That increased during that time period. And we're going to we're going to see if there is a link to this injury.
Yeah, let's find out if there's a link. And I trust RFK Jr. I like the way he sounds. Here's another one from Vice President JD Vance on Twitter. This one is in response to another guy criticizing MAGA people. Let me get zoomed in here on this one. So this is the first one. This is by a snobby. This is Jesse Singal. He's just a text guy from New York Magazine. There you go. Joining the Trump bandwagon means you either need to be dumb or pretend to be dumb. JD Vance might have mortgaged his morality and his legacy, but he's not dumb. He doesn't actually think anyone's proposing 20 million trials. Rather, he knows he has very, very dumb supporters. What a terrible thing to say. Now here's JD Vance responding to him. I hate this smug, self-assured, and he says BS, a bad word. Quote, I know I'm right and people must be dumb or immoral to disagree with me, unquote. It's an easy way to go through life because you never have to think seriously about why your worldview is a justification for the mass invasion of the country my ancestors built with their bare hands. It's a great retaliation. Here's the Ben Shapiro clip from that Marco Rubio reposted on formal censorship by the government. And will we ever get to the bottom of it and get it exposed?
So let's talk about this major move that you just made at the State Department, getting rid of a big chunk of the censorship bureaucracy that had been created and pushed a while back, but then exacerbated over the course of the last few years, hidden. What's the story with what you are doing over at the State Department to get rid of the body formerly known as the Global Engagement Center?
Yeah, I think you have to understand the history behind it. It's real brief. They started it by saying, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, all these terrible groups are radicalizing people online. We should do something about it. And, back when they came up with that 12 years ago, whatever it was, people are like, whatever makes sense.
This was also, by the way, how they found the blind sheikh. They went online, they saw him promoting all this terrorism, and they just made this formal department going, we'll find out how this homegrown stuff is being made on the internet. And then suddenly, fast forward a few years later, Biden administration is spying on American citizens.
And then it metastasized, and it's like, oh, there's foreign interference in our elections. We need to start going after that. Well, then by 2020, it became a movement to go after voices inside of American politics and begin to label people. And they put a guy in charge who basically was going around saying Trump speaks just like these foreign terrorists. His supporters speak just like these foreign terrorists. So now you have an individual running a State Department entity that was labeling American speech by Americans as foreign interference. And then really the kicker was not only were they doing all that formally from the State Department, but they were taking State Department money and they were giving it to these third-party groups who were supposed to be like independent, verified arbiters of what's true and what isn't, what's good and what's bad. And these groups were deliberately targeting, I believe you were one of the ones they targeted, I think the Federalists, began putting labels on people. Now, you may say, okay, well, what's the importance of the label? Well, that's not just the issue here. The issue is not only did they put labels on people, that was then used to go to social media companies. It was used to go to outlets and say, you have to deplatform these people, or you have to cut back on how much views they're getting. You have to go after them. In essence, silence them. So in essence, it metastasized and the metamorphosis into a government-run entity that was targeting political speech in America, labeling it disinformation, and silencing it. All paid for by the American taxpayers directly and indirectly.
Now that is against the First Amendment. That is, your government broke its own First Amendment that they swore they would uphold. Your government swore that they would not censor in any way the people. And now you actually have them paying agents to reach out to social media platforms just like this one and say, you will push the views down of Ben Shapiro or the Federalist. And that is illegal and it has to stop. So Marco Rubio has talked about wiping out that entire program of misinformation and censorship at our government.
Right before we took over, they got rid of this Global Engagement Center. They renamed it and moved it somewhere else. But, renaming something doesn't change it. You still leave the thing around. So we've undertaken, 12 weeks of looking, how do we reorganize this whole thing? How do we get rid of it? And that's what we're announcing today is we're taking the whole thing down, and it's about $50 million. I mean, it's not a small amount of money. And we're not going to be in the business of doing this anymore. In fact, we're going to be in the business of promoting free speech in America and around the world as a core American value. And that really is what we're going to be about right now. And we're also going to go back and look at, as an accountability project, all of the instances in which this was used as a weapon against American political voices. And the reason why that's important is not just because of accountability, it's to make sure it never happens again. You document these things so that someone in the future, when they get some bright idea like this, realize, why we shouldn't do it, because this is what it turns into.
And Secretary Rubio, it's a really good object lesson in what happens with some of these government agencies, which start off decades ago with the right purposes and then gradually are infiltrated by people with a significant political partisan agenda who then proceed to weaponize these institutions against Americans. We've seen this in USAID. Obviously, we see this
Correct.
here with the GEC turned into another sort of body that was then hidden inside these agencies. And when people like President Trump talk about the deep state, this is the kind of stuff that he's talking about.
And that is the Global Engagement Center is no more a $50 million savings to you, the American citizen. We're no longer going to be doing that censorship. I have one more clip here of RFK Jr. on how we're going to get answers on the cause of autism, he believes, by September.
We're going to follow the science no matter what it says.
Follow the science no matter what it says.
We will have some of the answers by September. It's going to be an evolving process. We're going to we're going to issue grants the way that it's always done to university researchers and others. We're going to remove the taboo. People will know they can research and they can follow the science no matter what it says without any kind of fear that they're going to be censored, that they're going to be gaslighted, that they're going to be silenced, they're going to be defunded, de-licensed, and we're going to give them permission to do this research. And then
so the first thing they do is they have to remove the fear. Remember, the fear is already there in that system. That is, they were not conducting science. If they came up with certain theories or they had certain conclusions, you lost your license, you lost your funding, they'd shut you down. I know this from the creation world. James Tour, one of the greatest biologists in the world, chemical biologists in the world, who creates molecules and stuff like that. He said that, most scientists will not say that they're pro-creation and that they're evolutionists because they don't want to lose their funding. Just for saying those words, science will go in and destroy your career. And so the first thing RFK Jr. has to say is, look, whatever your science is that you're conducting, you're not going to get in trouble if you come up with the wrong answer. That is another way that you stop censorship, is you stop punishing people for coming up with things that you don't like or you don't disagree with. Stuff that you frankly might even think is dangerous.
Open it up to the research community, and we're going to task them with certain outcomes, and we're going to have them come and bid on how to do the research. This is all being run by Jay Bhattacharya and I think Martin Goldorf may be also working on this on designing the grant proposals. So it's going to be done by credible scientists, by the most credible scientists from all over the world, and we're going to do it very, very quickly.
Ah, yes. I feel good about that. Again, I've told you guys, I kind of see RFK Jr. as a little hoo-hoo, but he keeps just time after time being very sober, being very wise, and all the sane people who I would not think were hoo-hoo, they're the ones that acted crazy with censorship, paranoia, shutting people down. They're the totalitarians. So once again, I'm going to throw my bet on RFK Jr. and say, Godspeed to you. He probably has an incredible chance of finding out the cause of autism. I mean, he's conducting science the way I think it should always be conducted. Open-minded, funded, run the grants. In fact, you want some outliers, some people that actually believe very strange things, to go out looking, because it never hurts to look. It never hurts to allow more free speech, is how you stop lies. Not going from a top-down approach and start pre-screening what everyone does, says, and thinks. I'm Doug in exile. What do you guys think? Will RFK Jr. find the cause of autism?